Okay, great. So we're in Italy. Time is relative, as Fabio said. No? It's an Italian who said that, but still we'll try to start this parallel session of NHNAI project. And I'm not Stefano. Of course not. I'd like to, but...
I would like to. Alessia Farano.
I think we don't have source. I'm not sure we have the names for the parallel sessions, but yes, let's just not mislead people in believing that you're Mario and I'm Stefano. Okay, so I'm glad to welcome Alessia Farano from Università LUISS. So maybe you can give the acronym. I don't have it here and I don't remember. So it's, what is L-I?
Libera Università degli Studi Sociali.
Studi
Sociali.
Studi Sociali. Okay, great. Thank you. And so the title is, Are We Free to Obey? Cognitive Sciences and Obedience in Law. And so I give you the floor for about 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So I will continue a little bit what Professor De Caro was saying as a reply to one of the questions, because my presentation will be about the nudge theory. I will start from the conceptual work I am dealing with. What does it mean to obey the law? Is freedom of choice somehow intended as self-determination, as Fabio Macioce was saying, or instantiation of freedom, as Mario De Caro pointed out, a requirement for legal obedience? What is the relationship, the conceptual relationship between freedom of choice and legal obedience? So according to Herbert Hart, following a rule means anticipated the consequences of our actions. It has the sanction in order to make the, I'm quoting Hart, choice in the direction of obedience. So we have two conceptual elements here at stake: the choice to obey and the mental prevision, the anticipation of the legal consequences of our action. This is a traditional stance dating back at least to Cesare Beccaria, I would say, that we might define the traditional penal logic. The traditional penal logic works in the following way. The punishment provided by the law should be balanced in the mind of the individual against the potential benefit that may derive from the offense. This is a typical exercise of instrumental rationality. A person asks herself what to do to obtain or to avoid a given legal outcome. And in this reasoning, legal sanction plays a pivotal role, I would say, acting as an instrument in this balancing reasoning. On the other side, the forward thinking is also what guides the rule maker's action. To prevent the infraction, the rule maker has to make the threat of the evil less attractive than the benefit that comes from the crime, the edictal phase of the punishment. If we consider recent accounts in the domain of philosophical foundation of rule following, we find this persistent idea of reason. The rule is intended as a reason for action, and reasoning as responsiveness to reasons. This is also a way to philosophically understand the idea of freedom, also outside the boundaries of legal philosophy. Sticking to legal philosophy, we find this very idea, the conceptual link between freedom of choice and rationality. For instance, in Joseph Rath's account of normativity, built on Herbert Hart's idea of obedience. Rule is a reason for action. We also find this idea, for instance, in Anthony Duff's philosophy of criminal law or in Neil Levy's moral philosophy. Keeping this conceptual definition of rule following in mind, how can we understand recent normative phenomena enhanced or driven by psychological and neuroscientific findings such as nudge and algorithmic regulation? The first case I will deal with is the regulation by nudge. The Nobel Prize winner Richard Taylor and the legal scholar Cass Sunstein wrote this very influential book in 2008, and this book led to a number of nudge units across the world. The nudge theory is grounded on the philosophical assumption made famous by Tversky and Kahneman about human rationality. Their idea is that we are often, very often, poor decision makers, as we are driven by the so-called system one, which is faster but also inaccurate, prone to heuristics and biases. System 2 represents a mode of thinking characterized instead by conscious, deliberate, and effortful cognitive processes. System 2 thinking is lower, analytical, and requires mental efforts to make reasoned decisions, solve complex problems, and engage in critical thinking. Kahneman famously said that System 1 is very much likely to activate even when we should use the other system. So more frequently than we think, we fail to use System 2. Instead of taking deliberate, analytical decisions, we are driven by cognitive biases and we make logical mistakes. So on the normative side, the core of nudge theory is the idea that it is possible to exploit, to take advantage of this human weakness, the proneness to heuristics and biases, in order to, I'm quoting, help people make the choices they would have made if they possessed complete information, unlimited cognitive ability, and complete self-control. The book opens with a very simple and catchy example. To encourage young people to choose healthier food, they suggest that cafeteria managers place the healthy options more prominently, such as placing the fruit in front of the snacks and so on. Due to the availability heuristic and the influence of priming, people will systematically tend to opt for the more available, healthier items. I won't deal with the issue of libertarian paternalism raised by the nudge. I will focus just on one point, one line of criticism addressed to the nudge theory, which is the lack of rationality or freedom intended as responsiveness to reasons of the nudgy. Meaning the manipulation of people behavior. So this is the main line of criticism addressed to nudge theory. Having said that the act of rule following means taking the rule as a reason for action, in this case, we are rather facing, I would say, a mere compliance with a rule. I am taking here the distinction made by Showers, who sadly passed away 2 days ago, I think, because there is no intention to follow a rule behind behavior that still meets legislators' intention. There was no forward thinking, no prediction made by the individual. Instead, from the lawmaker side, there was a prediction within, of course, a range of different shades of accuracy. Are we, the nudges, out of control over our actions? over our decisions to follow a rule. This is the main problem. I will not answer for the moment. Instead, I will present the second example, which is the emergence of a new kind of normativity affecting, also in this case, the freedom to follow a rule. A normativity coming from the continuous interaction produced within the internet on the individuals. This phenomenon has been labeled in different ways. Rouvroy calls it algorithmic governmentality. We might call it algorithmic regulation in a more favorable way, but also algocracy. The phenomenon I am referring to is a form of governance in which algorithms constrain, incentivize, nudge, manipulate, or encourage specific kind of human behaviors. And this happens by the collection, the analysis, and the use of data. The effect of generating rules, legally binding rules, I think is very clear, is undeniable. Think about the classic example of a loan denied by a credit scoring algorithm. Why am I comparing it to nudge? Because as well as nudges, it is a form of influencing people's behavior through the possession of a high degree of knowledge, psychological and neuroscientific knowledge, about how people think and behave. And it raises concerns about the manipulation of behavior too. So for this reason, algocracy has been defined hyper-nudge. For instance, there is this scholar, Yang, who argues that the mechanism of manipulating people's behavior is quite the same in algocracy and in nudge, except for the fact that algocracy allows an individualized, tailored choice architecture that learns and adapts to the individual user through the use of data. So the result is simple suggestions intended to prompt the user to make decisions preferred by the choice architect. Can we say that this suggestion is a justified reason for the action of rule following? Can we say that it is a regular rule following activity? Antoinette Rouvroy's answer is a resounding no. She draws her theory of algorithmic governmentality on Michel Foucault's notion of gouvernementalité. I won't go into it. What matters here is the shift. I think this is very important, highlighted by Rouvroy, from the penal logic, the one we saw before starting with Cesare Beccaria, to the intelligence logic, the preemptive turn as it has been defined. So the data collection anticipates the individual's choice in the direction of obedience as it produces an immanent kind of normativity. So immanent norms in the Foucauldian Rouvroy's idea are those which are not imposed from outside, but arise spontaneously from life itself, from the life as mediated by algorithms. For this reason, algorithmic governmentality is conceived as a type of anormative rationality, aiming at modeling, anticipating, and affecting in advance possible behaviors. So the result is that we would no longer have the option of disobedience, because there is an overlap between acknowledging a rule and obeying it. No doubt that the algorithmic regulation somehow alters the functioning of the rule-following mechanism. As for the nudge, In both cases, there is no such thing as the exercise of instrumental rationality in the classical sense outlined earlier. If I want to obtain a certain legal outcome, I need to act in a certain way. There, the key was predictability from both sides, the lawmaker and the agent. Here, predictability totally lacks from the agent side and needs to be at least reconsidered from the lawmaker side. But I think that this problem, the issues of manipulation, can be reframed if we consider the very notion of freedom to act as reason responsiveness. So in this last part, how many minutes do I have? 1 minute. 1 minute, okay. So I will try to reframe these challenges very briefly. So the first point deals with the debate about free will that was very brilliantly outlined by Mario De Caro. So especially with a very specific assumption, the compatibilist assumption that free will requires the total control of the causal chain of events. When we say that nudge and hyper-nudge raise concerns about the freedom of the agent, we implicitly assume that to act freely means to have the total control of the outcomes, to be able to predict them. But I don't think this is the core, the conceptual core, as I mentioned earlier, of freedom to act. If we reframe the idea of freedom to act as ability to follow a rule, to keep the rule as a reason for action, we can overcome, I think, this issue. I am also quoting Taylor in saying that if it is rational to be guided in our judgments by testimony, it is no less rational to be guided by implicit recommendations. So if we accept these recommendations, these nudges, as reasons for our action, I think that we can overcome this line of criticism, and we can preserve the freedom of choice also, and the freedom to obey a rule also in a nudged system.
Okay, thanks a lot. I think, yes, the floor is open for comments. Yes, sure. So either you use this one.
So, yeah, thank you for this talk. This is a follow-up to the talk given by Mario De Caro and the discussion with Fabio Macioce. So we need another framework, another approach, because the idea of self-determination, so the idea of the self, we need to reframe in a more relational approach. And so in this relation includes artificial intelligence, machines, and other kind of agents. And so, in this way, we are able to think about artificial intelligence and algorithms not only in terms of manipulation, but also in terms of help, as Fabio Macioce was saying, to be free. And and you think that the approach able to do this would be in terms of reasons responsiveness. So can you say us more about reasons responsiveness? Is that the collective and relational framework?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Can I answer now or
Sure.
Okay. Yes, of course, I will need to elaborate a little further the idea of reason responsiveness, which I draw on Joseph Rath's idea of also responsibility and normativity. I think that following a rule, so obey the law, means having a rule as a reason for action, not to absolutely freely act and decide what to do. So I think that the reasoning underneath the rule-following activity is not conceptually linked to the idea of free will, but to the idea of, yes, reason responsiveness, so the ability of keeping a rule as a reason, also ex post, I would say. It's not necessary, in my opinion, that we predict every outcome of our action, but that we kind of recognize that action as ours because we made it considering the rule as a reason for our action. So, but thank you for.
Yes, please.
Do you think there is a difference between reason for acting and cause for acting?
Yes, yes. Thank you for the question. Yes, if we define the reason as a cause for action, of course we are reframe the decision-making process in a causal way. We are using the deterministic categories. So I don't think, but this would entail a very, an ontological assumption on the word that I am not, which I'm not doing. I'm from a legal point of view, I don't think it's necessary to decide whether the word is deterministic or not, whether our decisions are causally determined or not. This is just.
That's not the question. My question is reason for acting and cause for acting.
Cost.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yes.
You mean cause?
No, I think.
Cause or cost?
Cause.
Cause or cost? Causes.
Cause and effects.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what's corresponding?
Yes, yeah. I think that when we made legally relevant decision making, we are not caused by the reason. We are not caused by the rule. These rules are motives of our action. But this is just my opinion. I would love to explore further the
Maybe
issue.
you could say there is a causal pattern and reasons they're in it.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yes. Yeah. Yes. 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 Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, thank you a lot, Alessia. I think we can greet you again. And now I give my pleasure to invite you, Almási. So Zsolt, I'm trying to pronounce as best as possible. So I'm hesitating, Pázmány, Péter Catholic University. And sure, you can person that. You will present about Humanism reloaded in our technosocial ecosystem. Is it working that way? Yeah? Fine. Okay, perfect. So the floor is yours for same principle.
Thank you very much. I'm going to time my speech so that
I can
okay.
on that, but 15 would be good.
Right. The inquiry
into human freedom and agency has long been a fundamental project since the beginning of philosophical thought. Scholars and thinkers have endeavored to carve out conceptual space for human freedom and agency, contending various constraining factors, whether they manifest as idolae of the mind, a mean scientist, God, a foul demon, chemical determinism, the unconscious, social determinism, theological predetermination, the rule of algorithms. These challenges prompt ongoing intellectual exploration and debate aimed at safeguarding and enhancing human autonomy. From this historical perspective, three problems emerge for consideration. Firstly, it becomes evident that the notion of absolute freedom is challenging. Consequently, the inquiry explores the extent of human freedom. Secondly, in correlation with the first, there arises the question of how to conceptualize the human being. Serving as a common thread, linking these issues and challenges is the third concern, how to conceptualize human agency. These three problems may be explored in the context of the challenge presented by post-humanist philosophy. A philosophy that can be viewed as a collection of rational assertions regarding humanity with the technosocial ecosystem of the 21st century. However, post-humanist thought should rather be, I guess, perceived as a critique of and confrontation with what might be categorized or fictionalized as traditional humanism. In post-humanist thought, it is feasible to discern three overarching and abstract denominators, as is argued in Francesca Ferrando's post-humanist philosophy, such as post-humanism, post-anthropocentrism, and post-dualism. Problematizing anthropocentric theories means that post-humanism endeavors to place all other entities in their appropriate context by displacing humanity from the center. The objective of posthumanism in this sense is to perceive the human being not as an exceptional entity, but to comprehend humans in their interactions and collaborations with other entities, interconnected, interrelated, interdependent, rather than existing in isolation. How does the posthumanist stance address the issue of human agency in the context of emerging AI technologies? Given the scope of this presentation, I will focus solely on the second concern of posthumanist philosophy, the conceptualization of the human in relation to technology. To examine this, I will explore AI applications, particularly those that construct and communicate through texts and their interaction with humans. This exploration will reveal that reconstructing this interaction requires a discussion of human freedom in contrast to the machine's so-called freedom indeterminacy. Through this analysis, I will argue that human freedom and agency, though constrained, remain attainable even in the posthumanist context. The term artificial agency requires greater precision to facilitate effective discourse. A key distinction must be made between artificial general intelligence, also termed strong or deep intelligence, and artificial narrow intelligence, also termed weak intelligence. Artificial general intelligence refers to a technology that emulates human capabilities by independently learning, applying knowledge across diverse contexts, repurposing its actions according to emerging needs, and replacing human goal setting. This form of artificial intelligence, as far as I know, does not currently exist, maybe in movies like She, The Terminator. The second type of artificial intelligence, based on machine learning, employs supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning methodologies with human guidance and training corpus building. Artificial narrow intelligence can perform tasks such as generating texts, images, videos, or music in response to human prompts. These applications include ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and have been open for the public since November 2022. Once it has been recognized that we're discussing artificial narrow intelligence, it is crucial to use precise terms to describe the applications based on this technology: generative, predictive, invocational, artificial narrow intelligence. Lev Manovich characterizes this technology as predictive, arguing that the term generative may be misleading. Instead, he favors predictive because it more accurately describes the application's function, predicting the next letter, word, space, using complex statistical models, rather than articulating thoughts as humans do. Cheshire describes the technology as invocational, emphasizing that despite its sophistication, the application does not initiate actions, but responds to human prompts. As he notes, AI applications like ChatGPT, quote, are not autonomous actors, but lively participants in invocational relationship with users, unquote, functioning solely in response to human prompts. When examining human interaction with this technology, it is possible to uncover room for human agency and responsibility. This occurs as individuals, in utilizing this technology to produce, for example, textual documents, initiate the communicative situation with a prompt. The quality of the machine's response to the human prompt depends on the quality of the prompt itself, which includes a prior knowledge about the subject that the response is constructed about, a prior knowledge of methods the machine tries to interpret the text of the prompt, a skill that has already acquired the name prompt engineering. Subsequently, the user responds to the generated output by either accepting or rejecting it. Upon acceptance, individuals may or should amend the text to articulate their thoughts in their ideal voice. And ultimately, they should determine the course of action regarding the edited text, such as maybe deleting it or sharing or publishing it. Each of these steps involving decision-making processes facilitates the exercise of human freedom and agency. However, this human freedom and agency is threatened by the application's indeterministic text production. The application's capacity to produce text through infinite iterations, never yielding the same exact response to identical prompts, may give the illusion of power over the human user. Yet this apparent freedom is merely indeterminacy. It is this indeterminacy that I seek to analyze and contrast with human freedom and agency. To illustrate human agency in contrast to the agency as indeterminacy involved in text generation, I offer an example drawn from my own cultural context. As a Hungarian from a post-socialist, post-totalitarian country, I'm going to turn to art, which can capture human agency. The example is the play Juliet, a dialogue about love written by András Viszki, published in 2003. This monodrama features Juliet, reminiscent of Shakespeare's Juliet, in 1961, the mother of 7 children, whose husband, a priest, was imprisoned for 22 years, 5 years before of the action of the play, as an enemy of the Romanian socialist state. She and her children were deported to a prison camp indefinitely at the same time. In her monologue, a dialogue and argument with the always silent, invisible God, she drifts between sleep, half-death, and moments of clarity. Through flashbacks, she recounts her crazy love for her husband, of whom she does not know if dead or alive, and for God. In one flashback, a lawyer visits her barrack, orders the children to leave, and presents her with documents to sign. These documents would divorce her from her husband and secure her release from the camp along with her children. Upon hearing this, an unexpected wave of joy overtakes her. Misinterpreting her reaction, the lawyer takes off his uniform jacket, loosens his tie with an unmistakable intention. Shockingly, she then burns the documents without hesitation, without fear. The room is filled with light, symbolically also, and the children return inside. After the lawyer departs, disappointed, she, in her monologue, reveals that her happiness stemmed from seeing the lawyer as an angel of the so far silent God, who indirectly confirmed that her husband was still alive. One can only divorce a living man. Instead of choosing freedom, she remains in the Romanian prison camp, unbearable situation, really, awaiting death, personified as Lady Death, Angina Pectoris. This scene, with its emotional roller coaster, illustrates human agency grounded in an absolute freedom. Juliet's decision defies rationality, the instinct of self-preservation, maternal duty, and even the most abstract sense of the pleasure principle. A cunningly devised signature, she could remarry after her husband's release. A bit of rape could have secured her freedom and that of her children. Yet her freedom of choice was limited and determined by her faith in marriage. She was bound by her conviction that marriage erased the boundaries between you and I, leaving only we. Moreover, her uncompromising, if contentious, passionate love for God, the love triangle, holy triangle as she calls it, further shaped her decision. The very framework of her work, of her world, her beliefs, and her perspective acted as barriers to her freedom from the prison. Yet paradoxically, it is within these limitations that her absolute freedom emerges, a freedom that defies common sense, rationality, and instincts. This scene demonstrates that human agency emerges through interaction with technology. Here, the legal technology is embedded in the document, the lawyer, and the power of signature. Also present are the missing husband, the children, and the silent God. It is within this network, this ecosystem of objects, concepts, and persons that Juliet's agency comes into being. Her decision, and thus her agency, arises only in relation to, in negotiation with these entities. Post-humanist philosophy is therefore correct in asserting that human beings can only be understood in relation to other entities, including objects and technology, and cannot be understood in isolation. The primacy of Juliet is only true to the extent that the focus of attention is on her, but clearly she cannot be comprehended without the other factors. This scene illustrates the distinction between the freedom of indeterminacy and human agency based on an absolute freedom exemplified in Juliet. Although ChatGPT and other generative AI applications respond to human prompts in a human-like manner, the same prompt will produce different responses each time. These responses can be regenerated indefinitely, creating the illusion of freedom, as if the machine acts freely. However, this freedom is indeterminacy, as indeterminacy is fundamentally different from Juliet's freedom. Indeterminacy lies in an endless range of possibilities where the machine makes no purposeful choice between responses. Each regenerated text is randomly constructed from countless options. In contrast, Juliet's freedom that defies common sense and logic emerges precisely from the constraints. At the outset of this presentation, my aim was to examine how posthumanist philosophy seeks to decentralize the human being by conceptualizing them in their interrelatedness to the network of beings surrounding them. I have attempted to demonstrate that through the reconstruction of the community dynamics of the technology, specifically artificial narrow intelligence as predictive and invocational media, there remains space for human freedom and thus agency. I have conceptualized this freedom emerging from the interplay of one's environment, beliefs, and faith in contrast to the machine's indeterminacy. This view aligns with a dynamic conceptualization of the human, akin to Karl Jasper's notion that to be a human being is to become a human being, a dynamic process of self-transcendence. And I would add, self-transcendence in relation to the technosocial ecosystem to achieve one's own ideal voice or maybe self. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Almási. And so if there are some questions, we'll be happy to... Yes, one? Yes? Or there if you want, as you please. Okay. You have the choice, you're free.
Yes, I'm free. Very interesting talk. I have a question. It has to do with, so if I understood correctly, you say that machine indeterminacy is somehow the freedom of the machine. The machine, the artificial intelligence indeterminacy.
Yes.
This is what will give its freedom.
It's seeming freedom. Yes.
Yes. Okay. What would you do with the aspect of self-determination that also Mario De Caro speaks about?
Mm-hmm.
Can machines achieve self-determination? And do you think, well, if yes or no, how would that relate to the machine freedom?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. That's a very important and relevant question. And I try to use consciously the word indeterminacy. So I call this that there is no purpose in the choice between the millions of options in the case of a text generation application. So no purposeful choice. Whereas and I think in Mario's speech that would be self-determination, that we want to do this for a specific reason. And I think that cannot be found in the... so that's why I said that indeterminacy is just seeming freedom, because there is no self-determination in it. Is that an answer to the question? Thank you, but absolutely relevant question. I could have called this presentation a footnote to Mario's speech. It was so excellent, his speech. Yeah.
Thank you. You could at least call that also an opening for discussion proposal. So with small time, it's the best we can do, but it's really achieved. So come on. Another question, maybe? Yes, up you. Good.
It is rather common. I like
Thank
particularly
you.
the story of Juliet. But how I wonder how the Western feminists will respond there. But that's the joke. But well, I also like your final citation of
Jaspers.
To be human is to become human. Yeah, that is not Confucianism is exactly that. So humanity is dynamic being, which is always try to become human.
Mm-hmm.
So in Confucianism, I think, argue for the freedom of self-cultivation rather than ontological deterministic definition of being human. So maybe Jaspers already have some kinds of input from Confucianism. Thank you.
Oh, yes, yes. Yes, that's a very interesting point, although I'm not quite sure if Jaspers was influenced by Confucius. But yes, I think similarities can easily be found. And this, but of course, I think his definition of the human being as always becoming a human being is not a specific solution, but rather it opens up, I guess, another debate, because for this we need kind of some kind of a definition of what is the aim, okay? And that's why I tried to use the word at the very end, ideal voice or ideal self, and that is a matter of debate. So maybe your ideal self is completely different from mine, and there is room for negotiation in that question. But yes, I absolutely see your point, and thank you very much. I might incorporate it into a paper if there's going to be a paper of this. Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe last question, Kristen?
I was wondering, what do you think is the philosophical relevance for the interrogation of free will in artificial intelligence system?
What is the philosophical?
Relevance.
Okay, I don't know what you're thinking about, but maybe as a point of reference. So in
About machine, about freedom, machine, deterministic, whatever.
yes, as a point of reference. So the distinction between the human and the machine may reveal something about the human. So what is not the machine may be left for the human, or vice versa. And that may be a philosophical relevance.
It's a bit dangerous strategy, but it's interesting.
We have spent time doubting that humans are even free. So comparing to machine has not helped the debate.
Okay.
So was machine free or not, is immaterial. It's solving its problems as tools. It's helping us efficiently. So that discussing it with respect to machine has not helped the debate whether we human beings are free or not.
Okay, that may be So you're saying that that the debate over human freedom is not informed or not accelerated and not corroborated by the fact of artificial intelligence. And I guess you're right in that sense, that we can discuss the human being in isolation, as bereft and divided and not related to what is out there. But maybe, as post-humanist and Francesco Ferrando would say, isolation is misleading. We are caught up in situations or in a web of interactions, and that is what and in that respect, comparison may advance our understanding of human freedom.
All right, nice open question for the background of the discussions also, but I think there's many things to say, so let's keep that for the evening, the coffee breaks, the lunch, and so on. So thank you again, Almási. Thanks a lot. And now I'm pleased to welcome Wen-Hsiang Chen from Furen Catholic University, who will talk to us and read us the paper. So I think we have version of the paper here, but maybe it's better if you want. So we display it on the screen.
Yeah.
So
John will help me.
Just I put it on the screen.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
Perfect. And so the talk will be about, so the title changed, so I let you read the new title.
All right, great.
Thank you. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew, for having me to join this conference. Yeah, thank you, John. In order to prevent him from wasting of time, so I asked John to help me to operate on the screen. So, yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Wen-Hsiang Chen from Taiwan. My title here is the Artificial Intelligence, Consciousness, and Meaning as a Whole. Okay. This article starts with a quotation from Laudato Si. As the Pope puts it, the specialization that belongs to technology makes it difficult to see the larger picture. The fragmentation of knowledge proves helpful for concrete applications, and yet it often leads to a loss of appreciation for the whole, for the relationship between things, and for the broader horizon, which then becomes irrelevant. As we can see, the Pope then shifts this issue towards the growing domination of technology, stating that people gradually come to believe that realities are more important than ideas. In doing so, a viewpoint we once took for granted that the world is an invisible whole has since become problematic. The idea of the world as a unified whole can be traced back to Aristotle's hylomorphism, and the Pope's statement can be seen as a modern version of this realism. However, it seems that the modern worldview is more shaped by the figures such as Descartes, Leibniz, Galileo, and Newton. Overall, modern philosophy and science not only brought new developments, but also constructed a worldview that is optimized and infinitely divisible. In any case, this optimized and divisible worldview successfully depended into what we now call the era of technology. Although the success of computers and the internet has already prophesied the arrival of today, in the 21st century, artificial intelligence still seems to present a new milestone in technology. In the AI-driven era, most people are likely to be excited about its incredible applications. Some are concerned about the complex legal or ethical challenges it brings, and others are even more worried about the future of humanity. But like Pope Francis, this article suggests that the underlying principles of philosophy behind the development of technology and artificial intelligence deserve our close attention. Okay, the exact origin of the term artificial intelligence remains uncertain, but it is commonly agreed that it was named during a research project in 1956 led by John McCarthy. Since 1980s, AI could usually be divided into strong and weak AI. Without question, weak AI has developed into a powerful tool. However, whether a programmed computer can process a mind, truly understand, or have cognitive states remains a significant question. The key issue here lies in whether AI can think and understand like humans. These issues are always related to the problem of consciousness, I think, which now appear to be one of the most crucial aspects. Because the mind and understanding are likely related to consciousness, and the consciousness itself appears to be a unique attribute of human beings. So when materialists, scientists, or scholars are confronted with this challenge, they often find the best way to define their perspective is to either deny the existence of consciousness, downplay its importance, claim it cannot be proven, or assert that we fundamentally do not understand what consciousness truly is. In brief, the theory can be referred as an agnosticism of consciousness. For example, Brooks argues that there are no consensus on whether other animals have consciousness. He believes that a person can only know that they have consciousness, but cannot prove that others do, and can only believe it. If so, he says that when a robot someday claims to have consciousness, we would ultimately have no choice but to believe it. Similarly, Harari asserts that consciousness is unimportant, replaceable, not unique to human, and even impossible to prove. However, some neuroscientists and biologists who support the theory of evolution also do not stand with this perspective. Instead, affirming that the existence of consciousness has its objectivity and becomes a unique nature of humans through neurological processes. For example, Damasio argues that although the conscious state of mind is experienced in an exclusive first-person perspective of each of our organisms, we can still adopt a relatively objective view towards it. And another figure is Erdmann, proposed the theory of neuron group selection to explain the process of free selection among neuron groups level at the beginning of each person's lifetime. From above perspectives, it can be seen that the importance of consciousness remains a subject of considerable debate among chemists and neuroscientists. However, we believe that in this debate, the theory of the emergence of consciousness might be able to break the stalemate. The concept of emergence has been presented in many early cognitive psychology theories. Like Polanyi used the relationship between the sound words and grammar to illustrate the idea of emergence. He pointed out that the sounds are governed by a set of vocabulary, and when those sounds combine into sentence, they are controlled by grammar. However, higher level operations cannot be dominated details. Another grammar is generated by language and constitutes the rule of language. It cannot fully derive from it. I skip it another pages. Yeah. Another example comes from Bernard Lonergan, which is much more complicated. Yeah. In his major work, Lonergan defines emergence as otherwise coincident manifolds of lower conjugate acts invite the higher integration effected by higher conjugate forms. He applies the principle of emergence to both human cognitive structures and the development of the universe. Lonergan argues that emergence involves both systematic development and the intrinsic random interactions. Therefore, we cannot directly assert that one level will inevitably evolve into another, nor that we can claim that one level of emergence is more real than another, or that higher level emergence is more real than lower level emergence. Every level can be confirmed through its immanent intelligibility. I think that keyword intelligibility is very important in Lonergan's theories. So, Lonergan's insights resonate in some ways with Gazzanica's, like scholars mentioned earlier. There are many scholars. Yeah, this figure, this psychologists, Gazzanica's investigation formed a cognitive science perspective. Gazzanica argues that the concept of emergence is likely to upset the determinists. As mentioned earlier, AI can be categorized into strong and weak AI. Here, in the same manner, Gazzanica also distinguished between weak emergence and strong emergence. Because of time limits, so I cannot say more in detail about Gazzanica. From both, we might be able to affirm not only from a philosophical but scientific viewpoint at the emergence of consciousness. It's not something that arises during the process, nor is process itself. Instead, our cognitive abilities, memory, dreams, and so on all reflect various processes contributed throughout the brain, which each entity gives rise to its emerging state of consciousness. Yeah, in the third part of my article, I would like to introduce some other perspectives from like chaos, causality, and Chinese culture, from Chinese culture, from the country I came from, but Taiwan, not China. Okay. But it's also the same kind of same tradition we have. Yeah. I would like to introduce two distinct yet interesting theories: chaos theory and holistic perspective that is derived from Chinese culture and philosophy. Although their epistemology are quite different, both many ultimately challenge the over-reliance on algorithms. Chaos theory, by highlighting the complexity of things, demonstrates that it's unrealistic to understand the world through a single algorithm. On the other hand, Chinese philosophy, in a way, profoundly emphasizes the interconnectedness between humans and the world, forming a unified whole, suggesting that only through a higher level of understanding can we truly grasp the concept of the integrator of all things. As Gazzaniga previously mentioned, for example, the complexity of traffic illustrates this point, but on a much larger scale, it is even more evident when considering the entire universe. What we want to highlight is that chaos theory may serve as a powerful counter-argument to the mechanistic determination model. This theory explains the concept of infinite uncertainty, making the computer-based calculations inherently unreliable. A similar idea can be found in the words of certain philosophers who recognize that the causality in the universe is in fact extremely complex. For example, Spinoza and Pascal have expressed that causal relationships are not just one-dimensional, but mostly inferential. Similarly, there is no clear boundary between the whole and its parts. To understand the whole, one must understand the parts, but the whole also influences the parts. Therefore, understanding the whole is an essential step to understand the parts. Yeah, what I want to say is that the causality is not just one dimension, but it's very influential to each other. So that is why I think that just algorithms is not so powerful to solve everything. Yeah. Okay. Finally, I would like to refer to some Chinese culture or philosophy in relations to the current wave of AI. No doubt the focus of historical Chinese thought fundamentally differs from that of Western philosophy. However, we find that the emphasis in Chinese philosophy on the interconnectedness of all things aligns closely with the view expressed by the Pope mentioned at the beginning of the article. So let us begin with a brief comparison. Western philosophy from its origins is driven by the desire for knowledge in all its forms. This encompasses knowledge of the nature and physical world as well as metaphysical and ethical knowledge. In other words, human understanding of every aspect of all dimensions of phenomenon is integrated within the realm of knowledge. Not only is the empirical world as a subject of inquiry, but metaphysical speculation can be considered as a theory of knowledge that requires clarification and justification. Similarly, ethics and morality are underpinned by various theories and principles, which often necessitate careful examination due to their broad implications. In short, there is not only knowledge of nature order, but also knowledge related to being, God, morality, and human practices. However, the Chinese worldview seems to be quite different. For example, Chinese athletics are always emphasize the artistic conception. In this way, Chinese landscape painting does not pursue the perspective skill, but rather is willing to express a sense of overall harmony with the nature. Similarly, Chinese medicine is not so much concerned with the health of individual organs of the body, but rather with the coordination and relationships between different parts to improve the health of the whole body. Many similar ideas are still influential not only in Chinese culture, but also in Korea, Japan, and even most area of Asia. Now, of course, we share the same science, technology, culture, and way of thinking at the moment, but throughout our education, we, under the tradition, have integrated deeply some of above ideas. Traditionally, Chinese philosophy suggests that things do not have a fixed, unified essence, and only by grasping the whole can see the complete picture. Only keeping our eyes on individual things means the lose of the larger picture, and like the Pope mentioned. As one of the most important Chinese philosophers, Zhu Xi, emphasized that although it is important to pursue individual knowledge, what is crucial is to understand the whole. This well-known theory is reflected in his doctrine of the investigation of things and extension of knowledge. We use the phrase 格物致知, which means study of the underlying principles to acquire knowledge in Chinese. Once one has exercised efforts in this way for long, one will all of a sudden integrate and see the whole thing in a clear light. We use the phrase 豁然贯通 in Chinese. The phrase 豁然贯通. Sure. I can. Thank you. The phrase 豁然贯通 in Chinese has become well-known idiom that use means to suddenly understand or realize the totality of truth. Furthermore, as a Confucian scholar, there is a particular emphasis on ethical and moral requirements, which has become a central focus in almost all of his thought. The pursuit of knowledge is meaningful and valuable only when it grounded in cultivation and morality. It does not mean that the exploration of knowledge is unnecessary, but rather that good behavior and cultivation determine the knowledge by them can acquire. Here, Socrates advocated knowledge as virtue, but in Zhu Xi philosophy or even Chinese philosophy in general, this concept seems almost entirely reversed. Although this way of thinking has its strengths and drawbacks, the advantage lies in his holistic view of knowledge. But the downside is a tendency toward moralism without genuine inquiry. However, the optimized worldview today also has its own limitations. Because of this, there is potential for these two perspectives to complement to each other. That's what I thought. Yeah, because I have run out of my time, so I think I have to stop here. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Sorry, it's always sad to have to make the time management. I have an announcement to make before we jump on the question, because it's a bit an emergency. There is the police removing the cars parked along the wall over there. So if you came by car, like Brian, I know you came from California by car. No, but without a joke, if you have your car parked there, then maybe it's good you go to move it before being forced to go to retrieve it at the police station or something like this. And so yes, and so we can have a brief discussion on Wayne's proposal. So again, it's open for question or reaction also, because it was interesting to have that cultural comparison or...
Justin.
Yes, Justin.
Maybe for further elaboration. Interesting, I mean, I'm happy to have this conversation so far, a Chinese philosophical perspective to the discourse. You made a claim, maybe, but I think about from the Western perspective of algorithm. I think what of the concept of Li and Tao? Because the concept of Li, especially from the Jushi perspective, suggests that we can have the understanding of things. Everything has Li. Everything has some kind of principle. So if everything has some kind of principle, therefore, I don't really think that from Chinese philosophical tradition, we can say that it is contrary to the efforts of algorithmic, representation of knowledge and then of AI, which is, it appears that you're trying to suggest that when we move to other philosophical traditions, then this does not obtain. I don't know if that's my question.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I think, first of all, I'm the specialist on Jushi philosophy. Actually, I am doing Lonergan, Lonergan theory, cognition theory. But yeah, that's interesting. In Chinese culture or Chinese philosophy, Jushi is one of the very important figure. Okay. Yeah, in his theory, that principle or Li, that is it is something that we have to pursue, of course. But very interesting is that he believes that our heaven, Chen, or maybe you can say our universe has on his principle in general. So he in his theory, he always thinks that the personal Li and the principle of the universe is connected all together. So it is important to understand the universal principle in order to understand the life in the real life. So it is very connected. But I think it's some kind of different from the Western thought, like we automized the universe. Yeah, from the top to the from the bottom to the up. In Chinese philosophy, it is some kind of to be gradually become a totality. To become a totality. So it is very dialectic between human and the heaven to the universe, the whole universe. So I don't think that can be investigated one by one to get that conclusion. But it's some kind of the people who living in the ancient times, they found the harmony with human and heaven. So I think that is the way of thinking in Chinese culture. Okay.
Do you think that in Chinese philosophy, the cosmos can be explained? Is there that belief that we can have an explanation
Yeah.
of the cosmos, of the human being, of animals? Is there a possibility of explanation?
Yeah, of course, Jushi would recognize that the universe or cosmos is comprehensible or intelligible. But if we want to ask how can it be, the Jushi of many Chinese philosophers, you maybe ask the wrong question. You will fall into the thinking of the Western styles, you know. So they just found the whole picture of the universe there. So it is not easy to say that the 11th century's philosophers can be comparison with the modern time. But I think it is important to recognize that some wisdom it shows to us. So it is recorded to the Pope says that the universe is interact to each part of us. So I think when we see that we say crisis of Western culture, it just forget the richness of the being, So we have, that's right, That's right.
So, Fernand, but I would just add, and maybe we do two in a row, but it's a small one, me too. Sorry, I try to ask one sometimes. In connection with that, and you talk about emergencies and different levels, so I was wondering if a question would be not that like there is an explanation, or the explanation, or one explanation, but then many different possible explanations depending on the levels. If you connect the talk about emergence and part of Chinese philosophy. But sorry, it's almost maybe just a comment because it's a bit what I heard you said. And so Fernand, if you, yes, either you speak loud or you.
Yeah, I think basically, when we are talking about the AI, the artificial intelligence, we are, I think, in my point, that we are not just only talking about the technology or this political science. We are maybe you will agree with that. We are talking what we are, right? What is really human being would be, something like that. So it finally ultimately should be a philosophical problem. Might be not just epistemological problem, but metaphysical problems. So in the first side, it is not related to the AI solution, but the way of thinking, I think it is important to complement. So the Chinese philosophy maybe help us to notice that the whole picture of the human being or the universe. I think it is complex, complicated enough. It's not so to use the Tinko algorithms or Tinko methods to deal with that our universe. So I think maybe it is not so much related to this project, but so the Pope says it's not relevant. Not so the same way of thinking, but about our as a human being, there is something more important that we have to ask. Thank you. If I have understood you,
Yes, we take a last brief question, if possible.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's good beginning introduction of my presentation too.
Sure.
So, I really like you bring up Lonergan particularly the concept of emergence. One problem, as you say, ChatGPT and those kind of generative AI these days is the problem of hallucination, problem about hallucination. So they actually create a lot of lies there. So that's the problem. But they say it is decreasing right now. But at that time, I have some discussion with AI engineers and scientists. Whether is it possible AI can have emergence? Also, possibility of chaos theory. But I don't think the AI scientists know about other fields like chaos theory or kind of like the self-organization. Whether AI is now beginning self-organize themselves and then have kind of emergence. So kind of hallucination is kind of a step toward that. So maybe it's gonna be a comment or you have answered and
yeah, thank you for the question. Okay, because this technology is always developing around. But if we truly understand what means about emergence, I think emergence is something leap, something jump up from different levels. Yeah, so from if the algorithms, they have very clear cause and effects, that I think is not to show their emergence. Emergence, I think, according to Bernard, it is about something inside. So we create something new that we didn't have before. Yeah, that is totally different. So the question is that the different level, how can the upper level can be happens? I think it is something related to our cognition structures. So according to our cognition, we have experience, understanding, and judgment. So in these three processes that we suddenly understand, like Zsolt said, we suddenly know the truth, the phenomenon. Yeah. So we realize that I think that is not a machine can achieve that. Yeah, it's my idea. Yeah. Another thing is what is understanding. What is understanding? A machine can be truly understand what it are doing, what the machine are doing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah. It's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne, and again, thank you. Let's move to the presentation of Sara Fernandes from the Portuguese Catholic University Catholic University of Portugal, and if I read it properly, Universidade Católica Portuguesa in Portuguese. And so we see I don't know about emergence at broad, but we see emerging a lot of need for clarifying the concepts and defining what do you mean with understanding, what do you mean with emergence itself, of course, but with free will. I'm not even mentioning it, but so yes, you just do this, that. And then we wait. Thank you, Sara. The floor is yours, and it's my pleasure to go on the discussion follow up on the discussion we had yesterday. So it's great.
So, good morning. It's an honor being here at the University of LUISS once again. Thank you so much, the Scientific and Organizing Committee, for having me and my research team from Universidade Católica Portuguesa in Portugal. Our research is integrated in the postdoctoral program in integral human development, coordinated by Professor Péter. Now, we would like to reflect with you on such actual themes as neurosciences, AI, some of its anthropological and ethical challenges, in this case from an interdisciplinary perspective, both philosophical, neuroscientific, and clinical perspectives. The problem of human freedom and free will is currently being addressed in the interdisciplinary field of neuroethics. From a philosophical point of view, it is above all important to think about the value to be attributed to the neuroscientific experiences and discoveries for understanding the human being, and more specifically for the phenomenon of being an agent in the world. Are the results and the conclusions of neuroscientific investigations on human behavior a sufficient condition, as Mario Di Caro asked, for responding philosophically to the problem of human freedom and determinism? The most recent advances in neurosciences have allowed an increasingly rigorous systematization of a set of brain areas involved in reasoning and ethical decision-making. Clearly, neurosciences have entered the previously exclusive domain of philosophy and psychology, and is trying to understand what goes on in our brains when we deliberate and make decisions in life. For example, it is now recognized that the amygdala has the function of detecting, evaluating, and attributing emotional significance to the options faced by the agent, while the hippocampus complements this emotional significance with autobiographical memory. For instance, the anterior cingulate cortex allows us to anticipate and solve practical problems, recognize mistakes, and deal with situations of uncertainty. And finally, the hypothalamus controls the internal stability of the organism and relates it to the survival behaviors. The mirror neurons discovered by Rizzolati's team in the 90s are considered one of the huge findings, occasional findings in neurosciences for understanding social ability, the process of learning, and specifically the emotional and cognitive ability of empathy. Rizzolati team was examining neurons in part of the rhesus monkey brain involved in controlling the muscles of the hand, and expected to find neurons that would fire specifically when the monkey performed specific actions such as catching a ball or grasping something like a banana to eat. They did find neurons that fired when the monkey performed these actions, but it turned out that was only half of the story. One day, when the researchers ate lunch in the same room as the monkeys, they observed something totally unexpected. Some of these neurons also fired, activated, when the monkey observed an experimenter performing the same action, in this case, bringing food to his mouth. In short, these neurons, the mirror neurons, they fire, they activate when the monkey sees some action performed by a person, a monkey, and when the monkey does the action. The discovery of the mirror neurons is considered one of the most significant advances in neuroscience in the recent decades in the understanding of the social brain, and scientifically justifies, we believe, the importance of intersubjectivity. They are activated whenever someone performs an action, but they also allow us to internally simulate a behavior practiced by other individuals or even by ourselves without having to carry it out. It is enough to remember an action performed or imagine that we are going to perform it. Therefore, mirror neurons activate in humans whenever there is an intention, whenever an intentional behavior is performed, or the visualization of it in another, and play an important role in a variety of essential traits of the person, such as the ability to have emotions, to share them, and to know how to identify them in others, such as empathy. And that's the point of the philosopher Andrea Lavazza in his work, and this is the quote of this slide. Now, as it has already been really discussed and really well discussed, The neuroscientific studies that most significantly challenged the belief in human freedom were conducted by Benjamin Libet and Patrick Haggard. They show that the subject is only aware of his intention on to act after the brain has already, it has been explained, after the brain has prepared his body for the action, the potential readiness, and that without these unconscious neurological mechanisms, there could be no intentional state of mind. So Libet and Haggard's interpretation of their results led them to question the belief in human freedom and to defend the point of view, as already Mario de Carlos said, that human behaviors, including those that appear to be free, are, after all, causally produced by previous events that escape the ancients' conscious control. And thus, to these neuroscientists, these results show that we do not consciously cause our intentions, decisions, and volitions, and in this sense, our actions, so we shouldn't consider ourselves free. From a philosophical point of view, they defend determinism and challenging a specific conception of freedom, libertarianism. And for the followers of the libertarian current, to be free is to be free from any constraints, external or internal. So nothing beyond the ancient conscious motivational states can influence his choices and actions without diminishing his capacity for action. Now, from our perspective, it is not clear that the existence of unconscious brain processes temporarily prior to conscious mental states implies the conclusion that we are not free or responsible agents. And mainly to sustain our idea, we present to discuss four reasons. First, we can interpret the temporal precedence of unconscious mental processes to the consciousness of intention as a preparation of the human organism, in this case the human being, to perform intentions and make decisions. In fact, one would not even expect another work from our brain. Second, Libet and Haggard's arguments seems to be a typical example of informal post-hoc fallacy and reasoning that invalidly infers a causal relationship between A and B, namely the conclusion that A is the cause of B, solely because there is a relationship of temporal precedence between an event A and an event B. Third, in fact, even if unconscious mental processes always precede conscious mental states, there does not necessarily follow a decrease in freedom. And this statement is particularly clear when applied to conscious mental states, such as emotions. For example, we feel directly an emotion, for example, the fear, but we also know that at a later stage, we always have the possibility of counteracting fear and having various possible conscious behaviors instead of being paralyzed, such as running away, avoiding, and cautioning, among others. And fourth, neurosciences have so far reduced, interpret in this case, so far reduced the idea of freedom to the choice between possible alternatives. But that is free will, and it is not the true freedom that, for example, Kant, philosophers as Paul Ricoeur or Charles Taylor talk about, and that interests most from, we think, from an ethical and legal perspective. So under the influence of Kant's thought, we argue that freedom is essentially an experience of self-determination, and that is to assume, in the first place, a positive conception of freedom. To be free is to understand the will as a cause of itself. To be free is to identify with the actions we practice. It is to assume the authorship, and in this proposal, self-determination and self-creation of personal identity, in a way, coincide. The most significant decisions in life may not be associated with the choice between alternatives of equal value. As Charles Taylor argues, the ability to make strong assessments and create a personal life choice is essential to the notion of personal identity. Without it, an agent would lack a certain kind of deepness essential to humanity. The strong evaluator can be called profound, the deeper evaluator, because what waits in his evaluation is not only the accomplishment of his goal, but the life he seeks. And this project is strongly related to the notion of personal identity, as it is dependent on the horizon of evaluations to which one adheres. So returning to Kantian ethics, it is a demand, for example, that every person in every action reflect on whether the maxim of his action can become universal. And that also means that we affirm our autonomy and dignity if we are able and courage to disobey unethical and unfair demands. Nobody has the right to obey, for example, recalling Hannah Arendt, clarifying Kant in her book On Men in Dark Times. We are free, she says, only to the extent that we are capable of disobeying evil demands. That's the quote of Charles Taylor. So thus faced with the questions so debated and so well these days in the conference about AI and its ethical implications, we do not want to repeat what was already been so well defended. We just want to reinforce that according to what we defended here about what it is to be an agent and what it is to be free, which implies having practical intelligence, emotions, awareness, intentionality, practical reasoning, and to carry out strong and weak evaluations, we can only say that AI is a simulation of these human capacities, as Damasio maintains and Dominique Lambert also reinforced in her presentation. And from an anthropological and ontological point of view, it makes all the difference to be real or to be a simulation. And from an ethical point of view, it also makes all the difference to live a real life integrated in the world, open to the vulnerability and richness of human relationships and their bonds with love and friendship, but also of the disappointments and strength and anguish that to live a life of simulation, as Nozick maintains with this puzzle case invention of the machine of experiences. A safe life, if you enter the machine, it would expect us a safe life only with pleasures, but disconnected from real life, and therefore isolated with all the inputs of absolutely fulfilled, but because artificial would be inauthentic. It is a simulation. And the problem that arises, for example, in the clinical context is that in certain countries, the full body scan of the patient and the immediate diagnosis of, by AI carries the underlying idea that it could replace the doctor and the clinical relationship, which is irreplaceable. Not only because AI is an increasingly sophisticated resource at the service of humans, but always an artifact, but also because the clinical relationship is a relationship of context, and context is not taken into account in the AI's advice to the patient. Furthermore, if a human being is constructed through his relationship with the world, through communication, unless someone feels more comfortable making decisions entirely alone, then perhaps they would prefer the supposed advice of AI. But in general, human beings are beings of sharing. And in the clinical case, people generally prefer a real dialogue, a shared autonomy, and a shared responsibility assumed by both parties. So if a robot is not free in the sense that we define, and therefore not an agent, can it be ethical? Does it make sense to talk about unethical robots? The researcher professor, Western Bristol, he programmed a robot to make decisions according to Kantian principles. There is based on the principle that all lives are inherently valuable and equal in terms of value. For Kantians, this is good. For consequentialists, not so good. But what the researcher then asks the robot, he puts the situation to the robot to do is to make a decision in a catastrophic situation. And in these rare situations, it would not be possible to save all people. The robot, what will do, he will try to save everyone. And what happens in the end, it is that the robot will not save no one. Here, the researcher points to a biological human trait, the ability to adapt to new situations, which is also related to intelligence, human intelligence, knowing how to solve in the moment new problems by creating new solutions. So, just finish. For there to be equity and justice in the world, it is necessary, we think, consider the context, each person's living conditions, and the situation they start from. Like the scenario where here for 3 people to see, they all see the same landscape, but they need different benches or no bench at all. A robot is programmed in a way that makes it respond the same way every time, according to the principles, the same principles. And what we believe is that in life, our character certainly adheres more strongly to certain principles over others, but flexibility and decision-making in life require wisdom, and that can vary depending on the situation we perform. As we talked yesterday, about Aristotle's phronesis and also the practical wisdom of Paul Ricoeur. So just to finish, I would like to present some of the benefits of AI, specifically in the field of the health. And the future surgery maybe will be, and that's a wonderful benefit, to operate at a distance in a different, in a very safe way, and where the humans cannot go. So I just want to finish. This is my research, our research for this project. Me, Leonor Almeida, and Castro Caldas, that we presented here. And this is our research team on integral human development, coordinated by Professor Péter at Universidade Católica Portuguesa and funded by Portugal. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you for that first of 2 talks that will be more focused on neurosciences and things like this. But so we have time for a few questions. So please feel free to react. Or I see we are one. No, not yet. Yeah, you. Okay. Yes. No. Please. I speak before you one time, and I won't reproduce that horrible thing.
Thank you so much. So this is clear. I'm not really understood your conclusion, because I have understood that you told us that artificial intelligence and neuroscience have nothing to tell about what is really human freedom, this kind of things. I've understood that from your point of view there is a clear distinction. And at the end, I understood that you think that it would be possible to implement a kind of ethical reasoning in robots, and why not a conscious ethical reasoning, but I'm quite a little skeptical about that. But, so what is your conclusion? Is it possible to get lessons from neuroscience, artificial intelligence, to implement different kind of morality in robots, for example, or is it not?
Yes, so for sure, well, in the first part, we've tried to interpret in a way, the radical and drastic conclusions from a neuroscientific point of view that we are not at all free. And the urgency of that, I think that reply is because there is a tension between the neuroscientific and the philosophical domain, as for example, philosophers don't solve the problems, so we have new findings, new resources that can add philosophers to answer the questions that they weren't able for centuries. So we think that it was a quick conclusion, and we tried to present some arguments that, from a philosophical point of view and our conceptions of free will, we should not conclude, we have no reasons to conclude that we have not free will. Other question is to consider artificial intelligence as a resource, and there are ample debates, especially in Europe, concerning, for example, the personality of the robots and how we should consider them. And what we've tried in the minutes that we had to present, it is the idea that artificial intelligence in the deepest level, the third level, are always a tool, a very sophisticated tool to human beings. So, and we try to highlight in the end that there are benefits, incredible benefits of this tool. We even imagine future surgeries where humanity, the human beings with our capabilities, but also with our limitations, cannot do. So they do it better, they substitute us in their functions, for example, in surgeries, in anticipating future diseases, with, as we talked here too. So, of course, we hope, and they have lots of benefits, and we want that, but that's the point that considering as a resource, a sophisticated resource of human being, not an entity that we project human capabilities to the artificial intelligence or the robots. It's always a simulation, and Damasio and Dominique Lambert, they pointed out that fact. And it is dangerous to think that we are talking and convinced the same way to a robot, and the insights that they give us in our conversations with ChatGPT and more complex robots, and with the human being, it's completely different. And the dangerous is to consider that it could be the same, because the effect that it can have on us maybe can be the same, but it's not in fact the same if we consider the whole, the relationship.
Yeah, and probably, yes, I just give you but I would just want to add a small comment and then your question. Yeah, but it's you anticipated a bit, so it's cool. And regarding everything we said, an ethical robot probably, of course, there is the ontological question, what do you mean, is it the same as us? But there is the practical question, how our tools can help us to be more ethical. And so we could inject some of what we do when we do ethics in some robots. I'm working in an AI project where the idea is in having system that helps us detect dilemmas that we wouldn't have seen without them. So just that. And maybe it deserves to be called ethical robot or not, but it's involved in what we are doing in when we are ethically thinking, judging, and so on and so forth. And so it's important that we also raise the question in that sense. What is a good tool that will be involved in our ethical decision-making, for instance? So, yeah. Sorry, yes, Juan. Last question.
In one of your slides, you said, like you mentioned 4 points, like a critique of the neuroscientific stance. And the first one was that the neuroscientists defend a libertarian point of view, but for me it's actually the opposite. They're more like deterministic or compatibilistic approach. So what do you mean by that they are libertarian?
Yes, libertarian, we thought it would apply better to this reasoning of Libet and Eggert specifically, because they argue that we are not free and we are determined, and we are determined why? Because we have not control of our movements and of our motives, and that they sustain, that are unconscious, and that as unconscious neurological mechanisms that cause our supposedly conscious decisions. So that's a libertarian, we think, perspective, because they are thinking that we are only free if we are absolutely in control of our conditions that make us act. So when they say that the unconscious process that precedes conscious intentions, that's because we are not in control. We don't have notion of the causes that in fact explain our actions. And the libertarians only consider that we are free if we are absolutely in self-control. So there is no unconscious process there. And there is no limitations, there are no constraints. A libertarian, for instance, defends that I act because I am not constrained, and I am not forced by any internal motives and external motives. So if I don't have conscience of the real motives that cause my action, I am not free.
Okay, let's thank you again.
Okay.
And so Juan, I know that you have a small trick to do on the computer.
Yes.
But it's interesting that talk about conscious and unconscious. And even when we discuss together, there are many, I think, unconscious things that allow us to talk together. And sometimes we think that we have common unconscious or common hidden behind the scene backgrounds, but it's not always the case. So the way you use libertarian, you come with it and other people come with them, and sometimes unconsciously we believe it's the same or not. And so the good question would be, what type of unconscious mechanism should we look at to be sure we are not doing mistakes or something like this, or a transitional talk.
Yeah,
but please. So Juan, nice to welcome you. You're a fellow colleague, so
yes, Mathieu.
It's nice to be here today together. Juan Vidal from the Lyon Catholic University is a neuroscientist, and he will talk to us about the brain's mind, timely decisions, and free will. So,
Thank you, Mathieu. Okay, I'm very lucky. I'm the last speaker, so you're already thinking about lunch. Anyway, I will try to catch your attention very briefly. Okay, I'll try to keep my time. What can neuroscience and cognitive psychology tell us about human freedom? We've already talked about it, and actually, I'm very happy because the different talks and also from Professor De Caro have introduced what I'm going to talk about, and it will enable me to go.
Try to put the presenter while you're talking?
Oh yes, it's not. Yes, true. Wait, just a second.
He has his notes on PowerPoint, and so when the screen is duplicated, we have a few margin of maneuver, so you can take the time to do that.
Perfect. And
better to interrupt now than when you will need your notes.
Yes, thank you very much, Mathieu. So I will be talking, of course, again about this theme, the neuroscience of free will, a bit the Libet experiment, but I will try to go on another critique or something related to what Professor De Caro said, but another argument. I will also talk about the value of consciousness and unconsciousness for global human behavior. So we talk about free will, but free will is not the only cognitive process playing into human freedom. There's other processes that are very important for that. And consciousness can be reevaluated in this whole panorama of different functions that govern and articulate human behavior. Of course, yeah, I will talk about the value of control and learning for human flourishing, flourishing being associated to human freedom. So yeah, I will talk a word about that, and maybe, well, I hope to talk about some restraints or conditions that our brain imposes us and on our freedom, namely the proactive nature of our cognition, neuroplasticity, and homeostasis. Okay, so I don't know if you watch movies, I don't know if you recognize this actor and this scene. Have you seen the movie Groundhog Day? The day that repeats itself for this person, Bill Murray. He comes to a town and he's trapped in time. Trapped in time, okay, this is kind of unusual. So at the beginning it's kind of funny, and then he becomes miserable, very miserable, and at the end, well, he's not miserable. Well, but in the meantime, sometimes he tries to kill himself, and lucky for him, he wakes up always, so he can do it over and over. So the situation is imaginary, but it's interesting because it's Bill Murray does whatever he wants all the time, and he has every day more and more knowledge about what's going to happen today. And so he can really explore all the things he wants to do in time. Now, he does that, but at the same time, he feels trapped. And he feels like he's losing kind of a way of freedom because, yeah, he's trapped in time, okay? So this is just an illustration of saying, well, it's not because we can do whatever we want that we are free, okay? So free will is not the only function or argument to talk about freedom. But anyway, well, trapped in space, this is something much more common, being in prison, of course. That's a way of seeing a lack of freedom. And of course, the one that's maybe more concerning is being trapped in our behavior, like in very strong substance addictions. And neuroscience and psychology, they address much more this second part, the second case, okay, by studying behavior and mind. The brain is not just studying the brain isolated from the body, it's fully integrated, and what it does to behavior. The aim is to understand it as fully integrated. So neuroscience and cognitive neuroscience, they decompose at the beginning, and the scientific approach, decomposing the global behavior into small processes, studying them, and then trying to see how they match together. And of course, the process of willing is also reframed as volition. It's also studied, and cognitive neuroscience has not one way of studying volition. Volition is just not one concept. It's associated, for example, to the initiation of action, an action that you do because you respond to something, or something that's really that comes from yourself, are two distinct ways of wanting something. Volition as an intention, something that is between some kind of deliberation process and the actual action execution. You have also volition as a decision-making process that involves information accumulation before taking a decision. You also have volition as a sense of self-control, executive control, meaning that you have to control your actions because you are not the only one deciding over them. You respond to the world, for example, and sometimes you're distracted, so you need to block distractions to do what you want to do, okay? And finally, of course, agency, the feeling of this is my action, I want this, that's why it's mine. That's also another aspect of volition. Now, the Libet experiment addresses firstly this one, the volition as an intention. An intention, right? A conscious intention, that's the important thing. And because it's conscious and it happens before action, and it has some kind of a causal value, that's what the Libet experiment explored. So is conscious intention prior to action? That was what they were testing, basically. So very quickly, the Libet experiment, explored a brain signal, the Bereitschaftspotential, or the readiness potential, which was described by other researchers before, Kornhuber and Tieker in the 60s. It's a signal that arises in the brain, in the premotor cortex, right before you do, for example, a finger tap, you press a button. Right before that, there is this electrical signal that increases until the moment which is when you press the button, which is here, signified by this line, this vertical line. So these are many trials averaged, and this is something that you can see in very reliably. Now, what Libet took advantage of was the fact that he put this in an experiment where he also tested, so not only the action, but also when do we perceive the intention of our action. And that's kind of the novelty of his approach. And so what happens when he does that? So people are waiting there on a table and they can press a button. And at the same time they see like a little clock running around, and they have to press at some point when they want, but they're asked to look at the clock and see precisely when they feel they wanted to press. Not the moment they pressed, but the moment right before when they felt that, okay? And this is what they operationalize as conscious intention. And so they have these two moments, the moments when you press and the moment right before when you think, you perceive that you consciously wanted to press. And so they're going to look at that. They looked at that, but that's the neuroscientific part. They put in the background this readiness potential. And as you know, the moment when you press, the M for motor response aligns here with this potential, and the moment when they perceive that they wanted to press is right before. So, okay, that's good. The intention is before, but the problematic aspect was that the signal that arises here, the readiness potential, well, starts before this moment you are conscious. So the whole controversy is about that, actually action starts before you were conscious of it, so, well, then maybe you don't determine, your will does not determine. Now, very quickly, the Libes results have been discussed a lot. Professor De Caro has also mentioned that. There are certain flaws, let's say, or limitations of the paradigm in itself. The first one is the act in itself, to press a button. Okay, I press the button. Okay, I can press the button. But this kind of act is just deciding a moment of an action. It's not, the content is very poor, it's very empty. It's just like, I will move something, I will move a finger, okay? It's not the same as choosing something, choosing with the content. It means that this is kind of an arbitrary choice, just about time. And not about I want a certain object or something done more concretely with my goal. The other one, problematic aspect of the experiment is the reporting of this moment of I perceive I want to do that, this W moment, okay? Perceiving your intentions, well, I don't know you, but for me, usually I look at what I do, I say, well, yes, I did that, but when exactly did this volition emerge is something that we usually humans don't look at, okay? We are in the future. We're looking at the future, and yeah, so we rarely focus on this moment. So asking that to subjects to do that is something that we're not really trained on, so is this really reliable? It's very difficult to single out at a certain moment in time. Also, when you do that, actually when you do this exercise in this deliberate experiment, you actually alter the Bereitschaftspotential. That means that the process of focusing on your intention changes the neural signal. So that's also something that is kind of unusual. And the fact, the last critic I will say is that when you estimate the moment in time of your conscious intention, this moment, the time delay, is also affected by other factors that have nothing to do with your volition. It has to do with external events, even that occur after you have pressed the button. So this moment can change in function of some sounds that occur after. So it's not very clear. So the experiment is interesting. It was the first one, and it helped to discuss a lot of things. Now, more recently, not recent, yeah, 2016, Scherger and colleagues explored another option of this signal to interpret this, and it was to say, well, actually, the Bereitschaftspotential, this signal, actually, it's not the decision to move, like Libet, is not early, actually. The signal to decide is something that happens actually quite late, and this is not really a motor preparation after a decision. Now, first of all, they say that the that the signal here that you see, the bright charge potential, is actually not very reliable in all trials. Libet, you get this signal when you average many single trials. But not in every single trial you see the bright charge potential. So although every time the subject presses, so the correlation is not 100% actually. The other one is that when you don't move, actually, you can also get bright charge potential. So in that sense, is the bright charge potential always the cause of movement? Again, there's a little flaw there, okay? An open space at least. And the other, the conceptual contribution of the Scherger team is that they say that actually the signal that happens before you press, it's an oscillatory signal that changes in time. And they say, well, actually this is not the preparation of the movement itself, it is a decision process of will I do or not this movement, okay? And at some point, they say the evidence accumulates, and when it passes a certain threshold, then is a decision. Then the system says, okay, now I'm going to do it. But the whole time before is not really engaging the action. So this changes a lot. We pass from an early decision process to a late decision process. And the interesting thing is that the late decision process actually corresponds more or less to this W time when subjects reveal they want to press. So decision is kind of coincidence with the emergence of the conscious intention, which is, well, arranges a bit the picture, of course, of consciousness could be then a kind of a determinant for the action. Also important, once this moment is determined, and this happens like 200 milliseconds before the press, you cannot change it. The system is engaged in action and you cannot control it anymore. So, yeah. Anyway, so Libet, well, the results have been discussed a lot. Libet also was critical about his own work. He was not just saying that like that. He said also at the end of his paper, he says the following. He says, in those voluntary actions that are not spontaneous and quickly performed, that is, in those in which conscious deliberation or whether to act or of that alternative choice or action to take precedes the act, the possibilities for conscious initiation and control would not be excluded by the present evidence. So he's saying basically, well, if you're not in a hurry, and actually consciousness could definitely be controlling your motor intentions. So in a more broader scope, we see that certain evidence shows that from the Libet experiment and others, and also common knowledge we see about how the motor system works. The motor system is very much driven by unconscious processes, okay? And they guide all our fast actions. And the more slower actions, let's say, they could be definitely more controlled by consciousness. So the question that we might say is, free will, is it something that has to occur fast, or is free will something that we exert when, well, we take our time to decide things properly, okay? So the thing about, what I will continue about this now, is the value of consciousness in all this story. First, okay, what's the value of unconsciousness? Okay, we think that consciousness has to be there for us to exert our free will and our freedom, a way of freedom. The other question in the mirror is, well, are unconscious actions always reducing our freedom? I mean, whatever we do, all the actions that we do when talking is a lot of motor action, okay? I'm not aware of everything I'm going to say. I'm improvising, I'm not reading here, okay? And though I agree with this, everything I say is, yes, this is my words, okay? It is somehow unconsciously determined before, exactly in the precise effect, but does it reduce my consciousness, my freedom and my own action? I don't know. Sports definitely, sports people know that they rely on very unconscious automatized actions to be efficient and to win the game. If you put consciousness there, no cup, okay? The other way, also unconscious influences. Yes, we are influenced by everything, external and also internal, our memories. So, and that can be unconscious. So, is it because of that? Are we less free? Is it part of the story? Well, yes, I think so. It's part of the story. Oops, did you see something flashed on the screen? Yes. It was very fast. Yeah, that was intentional. I will do it again. Did you see, or did you recognize what was shown? Who recognized something? Raise your hands. Okay, good. Good, you were paying attention. Okay, good. So was it? Yeah, okay, good. You know that. Well, it's kind of, all the details are taken away, but your mind recognized it very quickly. This was I presented 200 milliseconds, okay? And you were conscious, yes, I saw it, I recognized it. Well, our brain and all the processes go so fast. The brain is so much faster. Actually, if you look at it, the neural signal arrives in the visual cortex after 50 milliseconds, is here in the regions of memory that serve to recognize what you see in 100 milliseconds, something like that. Later on, the signal can travel to prefrontal cortex that's ready to decide what you see, okay? And then you have, if I would have asked you to clap if you recognized it, well, this can happen very quickly also, 250 milliseconds after you saw it. And actually, you're aware, well, a bit later. You did it all, you saw it, recognized, and you responded, and then afterwards you said, yeah, I respond, I recognize. Consciousness is slow. That's the message, it's slow, okay?
And with 2 minutes.
And 2 minutes?
Scheduled, I tell you that you're already...
Okay, I'm already 2 minutes too late, so I will have to speed. So anyway, consciousness, okay, I will try to go very, very fast. Consciousness in the brain has different signature. Consciousness really amplifies signals in regions, especially memory regions, and this is very important. What unconscious signals, things that correspond to non-conscious perceptions, don't have. And this has a consequence for global connectivity and so forth. Consciousness is slow. It's also quite limited in its capacity. Okay, I don't know if you see the difference here. If you know this slide, if you see there's something supposed to change here, and you see it. If you don't, okay, I will help you because I have to. Now I'm already past time. Look at the motor here. It goes away. It comes back. If I would have left you, you would have found it in 30 seconds or a minute or so. Now you don't. Well, this happens. We think that consciously we see the world and we have access of all the details, but we don't. So consciousness is also very poor. Okay. I'm very slow. I'm sorry, Mathieu. Okay. I will wrap it up. But okay, what I was going for is the fact that actually consciousness, we think consciousness is like something that is like the end point of our cognition, okay, of a moment. But consciousness, through agency, notably, actually, is like a feedback to the system, and that allows a certain type of learning, a certain type of memory to be created. And that memory, that long-term episodic memory, is the one that is going to feed afterwards all the processes involved in our actions, action planning, and so forth. So consciousness has a function. It's not the endpoint. It has a function to create a certain type of memory, that later on is used by certain networks in our brain, called, for example, the default mode network, to create another kind of consciousness, which is actually self-consciousness. Self-referential consciousness. It's the space we go into when we're not interested in the world, when we start thinking. Our thoughts, our inner thoughts, this inner space that we say, well, I was not listening, I was thinking about something. Well, that has a definite neuronal component, dynamics, that actually give us the freedom to be cognitively not directly dependent on what's happening out there. Things are happening and we can interact with that, but we can also have our inner space. Anyway, I'm gonna finish. There's also, of course, studies have also shown that the fact that humans and human brains are designed, not are designed, but have developed a very highly skilled control, allow not only to decide what you want, but also decide what you learn. And learning somehow is acquiring new skills, regulate yourself, and this contributes definitely in an increase of freedom of the individual. And I will stop there. I wanted to talk about other principles that govern our neural system that also constrain, but participate in a way of freedom. Blah, blah, blah. And even philosophy, also Jonas Dennett. Anyway, thank you for your attention.
And clearly,
I'm really sorry.
No, you're not slow.
I'm sorry.
You want to share too much for the
I
time
want to share.
we have to offer to you. So, but it's great because with you and before we saw many interesting examples of, I would say, why not a look at ongoing free will. And I think it has been a tradition to say if you can look at something in decision-making happening, it's opposing to free will. But I would ask people claiming that, I think the burden of proof is on them. Why, just because we see something happening, it can't be free will happening somehow? So at least we could discuss that, and thank you for giving even more examples of that. You really point that with the Libet experiment, so it's really excellent. So maybe, I guess we have many questions, but at least one or two we can have before going for lunch. Yes, Justin and Fiorella.
Yeah, it's good that towards the end you talked about self-consciousness, conscious self, as I prefer to put it following there. So, is it the brain that is free or the self that is free?
No, I think the brain is not free. It's an organ part of a body. Is the body free? I mean, we are talking about the behavior, and once you talk about behavior, you have to take. We talk about the mind, we talk about the body, and how these two aspects are integrated in behavior. So it's the behavior that's free, I would say, and it's a relative freedom. I mean, in that sense, it's like, I would say, like bounded freedom. Like when Herbert Simon said bounded rationality for humans, I would say we have bounded freedom. It's freedom, but it's bounded.
So you are saying that it's the brain that is free?
No?
No, it's not. I'm not saying the brain is free. No, the brain enables the development of certain capacities that articulate our behavior, and that is what can be more or less free.
So what is free?
Free is the degree of action possibility or thought possibility. The fact that you can think of many things is a way of freedom. People that cannot think because their mind is paralyzed by a repetitive action, for example, or distraction, okay? Well, these people are less free because they cannot self-determine their behavior in so many ways that people who are not like that can.
So is the self that is free?
The self enables freedom, yes. If I would say like that.
Yeah, but then it would depend also how do you define the self? Is it
Yes.
consciousness or not? So we have to discuss that.
So why I ask that question is that
Yeah.
if it's not the brain that is free, all the efforts of neuroscience to understand what happens in the brain,
Yes.
of what's relevant.
No, I don't agree. And
I'm just asking.
No, but it's
part of the story.
Neuroscientists, though we study the brain, it's true, it's like we're brain-centered. I think we have to remind this brain has only a value when you integrate it in the body and the behavior and the person that is, the self of this person that is in this behavior. It's not a robot that is programmed and executes an active without this inwardness. This default mode network I talked about, I can come back to my slide, actually is a network that has been associated with the sense of self. It's also the same network that later on has been shown that is important in creativity. Creative processes require the involvement of the self, and the self using a long-term memory in a certain way. Our memory is not a library where this knowledge is stored like this. This notion is false. Our memory is an active process that is changing all the time, and the self is doing that.
Yeah, but probably I think we should keep that for further discussion, because what we need here is also semantic clarification.
Yes.
From where do we speak? Because what we have in common a bit is common sense meaning of the terms. But then, if we try to go too fast on colliding between the terms we use in our different present... No, but... yeah, but the way you use self, the way... what? Yeah, sure, but I think really we can't have that discussion in 1 minute. It's because we need to clarify what is the place of self and brain for talking about the self. How do you connect the discourses? So if we don't do that, then we can't answer the question. But it's a very interesting question. We can just open it now, and we need maybe years to discuss this. So to let the room for an additional question. Yeah, you can.
So unconscious is important for when we drive, for example. So we need some kind of knowledge, but this capability does not reduce our freedom. But maybe because, can I say, because I have already decided that I want to drive safely. So that it's not, and when I don't, in the case of a wandering mind, when I didn't decide anything, then there is room for creativity in arts and science. So it's a very good way to explain so new discovery in science. So there are a lot of examples in this field. Yes. So it's correct. So the question is correct to have just one framework in order to explain intentional actions, unconscious actions, and discovery.
You mean there's only one frame or more than one?
Only one framework of our functioning. So
yes, I think.
Before.
Yes.
We have unconscious.
Yes. Okay.
Also, and then we do not have any decision, and then we are open for discovery. I don't know.
Yes. Okay. I understand. I interpret it like actually it's conscious and unconscious processes actually interact, and they depend, and together they articulate our will behavior. Whatever we do, it's mostly, I mean, it's true, it's a lot of automatism and unconscious, and good that it is like that, or else we would be so slow, we could not do anything. Good thing that we have a good automatic machine, but it's good that the pilot is even though slower thinker, he's thinking ahead. That's what I wanted to say about proactivity. Our consciousness is not just sitting here in the present. It is oriented towards the future. So he says, okay, what am I going to do now in a few moments? Okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, so I will drive. I will say to the guys, okay, guys, we're going that way. And the guys go, and once in a while you monitor it's going the right way. Okay, that's agency a bit, like, okay, this is what I wanted. Okay, so this is mine, yes. So it's a coordination, yes, definitely. I think we have to understand the freedom in this articulation between conscious and unconscious processes. That's the one, sorry?
Okay, sorry. I think we have to go on during the lunch because it's stopped right the time. No, sorry, we have to stop. We have not that many time. During the lunch, we have to have the lunch. So I really apologize. It's heartbreaking for me, even with Justin, to have to reduce a bit the space. But we already 5 presentations. It's already not enough time for 5 presentations. So sorry, everything is condensed.
Yes.
Really see all we are doing for. It's probably, and I hope and I believe it is, the start for years of collaborations. Sometimes the start for a good coffee discussion, but also for years of collaboration. So I apologize, and I hope you will forgive me with that in mind. And thank you for all the speakers. And so we reconvene here at 2:30.